In this video, we're going to look at the fun things that we can do with SOLIDWORKS animation and this launcher assembly. So what I've done is I've gone in and I've broken up the launcher into parts for the main body, the arm, the locking mechanism, and even modeled a little Nerf ball. So let's see how we get started. Down in the bottom right hand corner of the screen, we've got a tab for Motion Study 1. If we click on that, that's going to go in and let us look at the timeline that we're going to use for our animation. Before we get started, we need to look at some of the different options here. There's an option here that we want to turn on for the automatic creation of keys as we do things. And then we're going to look at, zoom, panning, and rotating the models, and then actually moving the components, and then work our way into things like changing the appearance or making a component hide or show as we go. We'll start off with some simple stuff with orientation and camera views. Now, by default, the key creation for orientation and camera views, they're disabled. So if we come over and right click on this icon here, we've got the ability to turn that option back on. So what I normally say about our timeline and creating animations is that we want to move the timeline to a point in time where we want something to happen and then go make that something actually happen. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to move the timeline, come in and rotate around a little bit, something about like that. I'm going to move the timeline again, maybe come in, rotate and zoom in on the GoEngineer logo. Move the timeline, go back in and rotate around. And we want to get to kind of a point where we can kind of see this locking mechanism here. If we play that from the beginning, zoom in, come in and rotate around. Hey, there's the GoEngineer logo, and then back to the locking mechanism. Now, if we go in and start moving the arm to lock this in place, it will actually start moving it back at time equals 0 seconds. So we're going to change our method here. I'm actually going to turn off the automatic key creation, and we're going to make some keys manually. So if I select the arm, I'm going to start a initial key. That tells us that at time equals 6.4 seconds, we know exactly where that arm is. From there, I'm going to move the timeline and then move the component down to about there and set another key. If I select the lock, set a beginning key, move the timeline, and then move the component about there and set a final key. Go back to the arm, initial key, move. Now, I didn't actually change the timeline. You're going to do this probably fairly often. So if I go in and move the timeline now, it kind of jumps back to that same point where it was a while back. I'm going to go ahead and move it down and set the key. So until I set a key this way, the manual operation actually is kind of nice. From there, lock, initial key, move the timeline, move the arm, and set a final key. So if we play that from the beginning again, zoom in, rotate around, there's the logo, locking mechanism, we're going to start pulling down, and then lock in place. Okay, we can actually come in and take the little time bar and go back in time here and see what's happening. Now you see the ball kind of jump out there. Sometimes we actually need to use the calculate button to come back in and calculate this from the beginning, and it kind of keeps everything in its proper location. So there we go. Go in and locking and done. So now if we want this to actually launch, we can actually do some of the same stuff in reverse. Just move the timeline, set a key, that sort of thing. Or what we can do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to window around these, and I can right click and copy, or I can just do a control key and a drag and make a copy of those keys. Now they're kind of connected right now, but with them still selected, I'm going to right click and I'm going to reverse the path because we want to do this stuff in the opposite order. So now we're going to come in, we're going to pull it down, we're going to lock it in place, we're going to set for a second, and then we're going to pull the trigger. Go in, and then our thing launches. Now we had that automatic kind of that pause there as we were pulling the arm back as we locked the mechanism. So we need to change our animation a little bit. So we've got a line here for the keys for the arm. We can actually come in and remove some of these keys. We can actually come in and kind of combine the two. So I'll come in and maybe drop that to there, and let's see how this works. So this is another case where sometimes we need to go in and calculate this from the beginning again and see how things happen. To open it and then kind of slow motion and then launches. Now we can't really see the ball and what's going on, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the auto key again, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and let me come back down to about there. Now, so it started actually moving from the beginning here. Let's see this again. So it's actually, as we come in, we're going to come in a lock. There's the arm coming down, and then we launch. Now, so I can move this key over a little bit and not have it zoom out as we're locking, but I kind of like it that way. Now, we're going to come here to the end of our movement, and we're actually going to come down to the mates, and we're going to be able to come in and suppress the mate holding that ball in place. From there, we can come in and move the timeline out a ways, and then move our ball out into space. So let's go back in and play this from the beginning. Come in, there's our logo, locking mechanism. We're kind of zooming out a little bit to see what's going on, and then we're going to slow motion launch, and then boom, have the ball fly out of the launcher and go from there. So if we look at the Nerf ball, we have the ability to kind of look at the movement of the Nerf ball. If we have explode steps, we can change the appearance, so we can make that ball, go transparent or change colors. We could, color the launcher arm here red to say, hey, we're pulling on this arm, just to draw attention to it. And just kind of depends on how creative we are with our animations. From there, we've got the ability to save the animation. Typically, we can save it as an AVI file. In SOLIDWORKS 2019, we've got other options like an MP4 file. So we'll go in and override the one I've got there and create a new animation. So is the motion or a date, you want to recalculate them? Sure. So it's going to go back through all the different steps with a full calculation of all the movement as it's writing out the MP4 file, and then launch the file. So I hope you found that kind of interesting, and just have fun with it and see what you can do with SOLIDWORKS animation.